Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever this video finds you. I hope you're having a rad time. I'm the Figure Dude, and on today's action figure showcase, we have part 2 of my ECW collection. Without further ado, let's talk about some figures. Dude. Welcome back to today's figure showcase. First off here, you can see I've got Lance Storm, and there's a bunch of different attires I would like to eventually do for Lance Storm. The one that just comes to mind first is this red and white attire, and he wore this in ECW, he wore this in WCW. As far as like timeline-wise, I don't know exactly how it worked out. All I know is he was in ECW, he was in WCW, and then he came in during the Invasion angle. For me, like, I grew up knowing him kind of I kind of remembered him during the Invasion, but the biggest memory I had of Lance Storm was when Stone Cold called him boring. So all in my entire formative years of wrestling, I thought Lance Storm was boring. I never sought out any of his matches. I didn't go see what he did in ECW, WCW, because I just thought he was boring. And then once I started watching ECW, in this last year or so, I realized I was missing out. He has some awesome matches, and it's not just he had some crazy matches in ECW where they're just destroying each other. He had some legitimately entertaining stuff, and I think that if you're a fan of wrestling at all, if you have not gone and watched him in ECW, if you have not gone and watched his title run that he had in WCW, where he held essentially every title except for the world title, you should. He had a pay-per-view where he was in Canada. He had all the belts. They played the Canadian national anthem. It was a huge deal, and it was really, really cool. So I knew I needed Lance Storm in my collection. I got this head from House 14 in a misprint lot, which you can see his nose is a little messed up. But this is also one I'm going to redo. So I did this a long time ago. I used the Jack's head when I did it the first time. I didn't love it, but it was okay. I have gotten significantly better at custom since then. I have some decals for the teal and the black attire. So I'm going to do that split attire. That'll be a work in progress Wednesday. Before too long, I want to use... I really want to get that done. I'm going to use this head. Probably going to use an ultimate torso or something. But I haven't given full thought to it. It's kind of an idea. But I have Lance Storm here. And then I can't have an ECW collection without his tag team partner for some time in Just Incredible. So House 14 also has a Just Incredible head skin that is very good. I don't know if he has released all of them, but my Just Incredible has a Threadhead t-shirt on it. I've got the John Cena shorts on him with some sculpted socks kind of, and it looks all right. It's it's another one that I plan to redo with the different Cena shorts, the short ones, maybe some Stone Cold calves. I haven't fully decided, but I would like to revisit this Just Incredible. I did need him to go with my Lance Storm, so I had the Impact players, but starting off there, two guys, had to have them for my ECW collection. Next up, we have the suicidal, homicidal, genocidal Sabu, and as a kid, Sabu was someone who before I knew if wrestling was real or not, I was scared by Sabu. Once I kind of started catching on to things that it wasn't real, I was still scared by Sabu. He was someone I watched, and I was genuinely worried he might die in the ring because he was insane. I liked him as a kid. When he came to WWE, when all the OG ECW guys came to WWE, I thought it was awesome. Obviously, didn't go how a lot of us thought it would, but at the same time, that original ECW was such a cult thing that we should have known, and I think a lot of people did. I wasn't quite wise enough to the business at that point to realize, yeah, this isn't going to be the same. But regardless, I did enjoy it when Sabu got his small amount of time in WWE, but a guy that I knew I needed for my collection. I didn't really have the means to make a good Sabu or one that I really, really liked. This is a Jack's head. It was okay. I had to repaint it though, and when I first started, I was not good at painting skin tones. I really just got lucky with this one. I kind of mix and match some paint. Didn't really know what I was doing. I did some layers, and I'd be like, "Oh, this doesn't match." Go back and redo it, and it ended up turning out pretty well. Like I say, even a blind squirrel finds a nut every now and then, and that was me on this head scan. Um, it's just, for me, it's just okay. I think it's a little too big for the body. The torso covers that like size up a little bit, but the rest of the form is just kind of a basic formula for Sabu. We see a lot of like we can use road dog parts for him, like those pants, or just people would just use the shield legs or bushwhacker legs. I used an Uso's crotch piece for him. Gave him some of the jean legs, and then gave him the lowers of the bushwhackers. So gave him the short boots look. I am going to revisit him as well. I wanted to get the figures that I want to revisit out of the way because the next ECW customs I did relatively recently, so I'm really excited. But I have Sabu, and then when I think of Sabu and ECW, I think of RVD because they had their thing with Bill Alfonso where they were like kind of partners, but Sabu secretly, but not so secretly, wanted to essentially murder RVD. This is just my ECW Heatwave RVD custom. He's been on the channel a couple times now. Just recently did my RVD showcase this last week. So I will link that. I'll have that in the showcase. Or maybe not. Maybe I'll link the ECW part 1. But if you want, go back and check out that RVD showcase because it has all the RVD Elite customs I've done. But I didn't want to put them all on screen here. We've seen this RVD a few times, but when I think of ECW RVD, this is the one that just comes to mind. So for the showcase purposes today, this was the RVD. So those are the ones that, like, I like them in my collection. I need those characters in my collection, but I've got to go back. I got to recycle those formulas a little bit, upgrade those. These next few ones, I feel like these have been knocked out of the park. Next up here is Mike Awesome, and this, I've wanted a Mike Awesome for a long time. On camera, like with all the bright lighting, you can see the skin tone is off a little bit. It's a little more like tannish as opposed to like the brown. So the face is gonna get a facelift essentially. I'll repaint that at some point, but the head scan is from Head Gimmicks. The torso choice, I kind of messed around with a few different formulas. I gave him a Triple H torso, some Rusev arms, some Hulk Hogan thighs, and then the boots. And the boots are from an Undertaker figure. Some of his Elite figures have different size boots, so they're like tall, but they're a little wider than others. I really don't remember what calves I use. I mess around with so many different formulas that I don't remember quite exactly, but there really wasn't a lot to do once I got that figured out. I do have Awesome on the back there. So you can tilt, there you go. You can see that a little bit better, but Mike Awesome, I mean, as the name says, was awesome. He was really cool. I thought he was really cool. He did some crazy stuff for a big guy, and I mean, still, I feel like stuff that he did holds up because he was nuts. When him and Masato Tanaka came back for ECW One Night Stand, they just continued like they'd never taken a break. Like, they put on some awesome matches, and I mean, you can't have a Mike Awesome like that original ECW. You need Mike Awesome. He obviously was in WCW for a while. I probably won't be making a Fat Chick Thriller custom of Mike Awesome, but then again, you never know what custom I'm going to make on the channel. So there's my Mike Awesome, and as I mentioned as I mentioned 15 seconds ago, you can't have Mike Awesome without Masato Tanaka, and this is one of my favorite ECW customs that I have. The head, I think, is a really nice scan from Head Gimmicks. One of the better ones that I've bought from him, I think. The torso choice is the Iron Sheik torso. I I've had this torso for a long time. I've used it for other figures. I used it on Hogan for a while before we started getting more figures from him, and I knew that this torso was the one I wanted to use for Masato Tanaka. The crotch piece, I don't remember exactly, but I used some Chad Gable legs on him. I had acetone off the tape, or like the socks around the ankle, but then his normal trunks that he wore. And this is just like, I just think this is a spot on Tanaka. And you can't have Tanaka without Awesome, and vice versa. So those guys, like, in my brain, I think ECW, Masato Tanaka and Mike Awesome series of matches that essentially could have gone on forever. I needed these two. Next up is my custom Balls Mahoney, and this is one I didn't necessarily like seek out what I needed for a Balls Mahoney custom, but I had this Jax figure forever. I used a Kevin Owens body. I did use like some Goldberg lower calves, I think, which you can't really tell. I gave him some Jax knee pads that go down. I think that fits his look really, really well. Articulation wasn't a huge thought of mine for this Balls Mahoney. I have a Marilyn Manson decal on the shirt. The head I did have to Dremel out a bit so that it would sit. It sat really high, so it made him like 6'7", which he was a big guy, but not that big. The decals on both sides, the tattoos, are both from Curb Stomp. Those fit really well on there. And then the pants, the shorts are just the normal Kevin Owens shorts, but I put like a gray wash over them. And then his shorts always had a rip in them. So I used a Dremel and just like carved out this triangle. Nothing too crazy with it. Like, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but I feel like that added a lot to this figure. And while I'm not specifically like this massive Balls Mahoney fan, I do really, really like this custom. I didn't have a lot of memory of him back in the old ECW, but in WWE ECW, he was relatively prominent, which, like, that is more where my fandom came from for Balls Mahoney. I just thought, I mean, the guy's name was Balls. I just thought I was in like middle school around the WWE ECW time, so there was no better time for me to become a fan of Balls Mahoney, and here he is. Last but not least, this is the pride and joy of my ECW collection as we speak. There's more to come, but I have wanted an ECW set of the Dudley Boys for so long. I thought we were going to get some ECW figures, or not even ECW, but even old WWE flashbacks of the Dudley Boys, and we got nothing. There's a lot of guys that we've had that have been on Legends contracts that haven't gotten like a second figure, we've felt like Mattel missed the mark. And honestly, even Hogan was one of those for a while. But the Dudley Boys have to be one of the biggest misses for Mattel. I feel like they just had an absolute license to print money with the Dudley Boys, and we got two modern versions. Then we got a battle pack of them in their like gray attire, modern attire, and then we got a modern version of them in their red camo attire. And that was it. You can kind of fudge, like you can swap some stuff around with those red camo figures, which I have done personally, but like not everyone's going to do that. And I feel like they missed the boat big time. The ECW Dudleys I absolutely needed in my collection. I know I've talked about like RVD I needed, Sabu I needed for my ECW collection, but like the heart and soul of so much about ECW was the Dudley Boys and feuds that they had. And as far as I remembered as a kid, like when I felt like the Dudley Boys just embodied ECW, and they came to WWE, so I knew them, and like they were part of the reason that I originally watched some of the ECW, because I knew that these guys were there and I wanted more Dudley Boys matches. So I went back and forth with these formulas for a long time. The Bubba Ray was relatively easy to put together. I just had to figure out like his height and whatnot. Started out with a Kevin Owens, but then he was too short with those legs, so I swapped out. I just gave him like some plain, like I want to say I gave him some Cesaro calves. Just hold up here. So I gave him some Cesaro calves, gave him some normal knee pads, and then I gave him some Cowboy Bob Orton boots, which just looking at it, like the formula looks real simple, but I did piece around a lot of things. The shirt, obviously, that was a Kevin Owens shirt. I just painted over it. Tried to kind of not to give it the tie dye look, but that um, like that different. I don't even know. I guess tie dye. It's all blue, but the iconic Dudley Boys shirt. I gave him some of those T-shirt arms from the Shane McMahon figures. Repainted those, and then the forearms. I don't quite remember where those are from. But then Devon was a lot of fun to piece together because I didn't want to make him too short, didn't want to make him too tall. I knew what pieces I wanted to use. I went back and forth on like what torso to use because I didn't know if I was going to just straight up give him this T-shirt mold. But then I ended up going with some black shorts, which I think are from a Cena figure. I used the Kushida calves, those white like the knee pads, and then some Sami Zayn boots. The torso is the T-shirt torso, and then I took the overall top from one of the AEW Ortiz figures. I acetoned off all the colors, so it was all black underneath, and then put that over. I'm gonna make a Spike Dudley, just haven't gotten there yet. Both of these heads are Jack's Titantron live heads. I thought that these were the best representations, or at least in my collection. Headeration has some really nice Bubba Ray Dudley heads, and Head Gimmicks just did some ECW Bubba, Devon, and Spike heads. But I wanted these. They're swappable, so I can pop them off. And since I can just pop them off, I decided to glue these glasses on so that I wouldn't lose them. I just put like a dab on them so they'd stick, and then I gave Bubba Ray the hat. And there's so many looks that I could have gone with for the Dudleys, but I really wanted to have that Dudley Boys shirt for Bubba Ray. And it should say Dudley Boys on the Devon as well, but I didn't want the decal rubbing off with those suspenders, so I just decided to leave it off. But I love these Dudleys. And like I say, maybe not a lot, but I've said before that sometimes I make a custom and I get done with it and I'm like, okay, this works. Like this is what I was looking for. And sometimes I finish customs and I'm like, yeah, it didn't quite come together. Other times I finish customs and my mind's blown, and this is one of those. I'm so happy with how they turned out. They are the perfect representation for what I was going for with my ECW Dudleys, and hopefully when I make a Spike, I have that same feeling because I want to make Spike. I'll probably make the entire Dudley family at some point, but I couldn't have ECW without these guys. There's more ECW guys I have coming. I've talked about it. Maybe not as like big of names, but I'm going to redo a bunch of the customs that I do have. So there's probably going to be a part 3 of this ECW collection at some point. I'm going to get all of them on camera real quick so you can see everyone in their entirety. Then we're going to get out of here. Alright, time to wrap things up. So there is part 2 of my ECW collection. Part 1 will be linked here at the end if you want to go check that out. So you can see all the ECW figures I have in my collection. I do plan on making more. The head scan lot that I got a while ago had a bunch of, I was going to say side characters. Some more like deep cut characters that I didn't necessarily think of when I thought of my ECW collection. But I'm going to keep pumping out these ECW characters as much as I can. There's going to be a part 3 at some point in the future, but I feel like I covered a lot of the heavy hitters from that original ECW. Obviously, none of the women. I need a Paul Heyman. Obviously, he's the patriarch of the ECW family. Like I said, I've got Spike Dudley coming. I have the BWO is said I'm going to be working on. I already have a bunch of stuff on the to-do list. It's just a matter of getting done, going down that list. So if you like what we're doing here, go check out some more action figure showcase videos of mine. Please like, share, subscribe. And lastly, remember, you can't buy happiness, but you can buy more action figures. Figure Dude out.